Good day, chess world. So today's game is a continuation of the wonderful book, Logical Chess, Move by Move, where we are exploring and growing our understanding of how to successfully attack the enemy king. Now, today's game will be the first time you will see the English opening. And the battle we will see today is a fight of white not placing their pawns in the center versus black seeking to control the center by occupying it with their pawns. We will see the turning moment of this game is fundamentally white trades their important bishop defending their king and leaves weaknesses on their king side. But let's get into this game from 1934. The big theme, of course, is this idea, the fight of occupying the center versus not controlling it using your pawns being in the middle. So the English opening begins with c4, and here it's a very flexible move, but they do not place a pawn in the middle just yet. So black plays pawn to e5, immediately placing a pawn in the middle to gain space. And this is the beginning point of this fight, this battle, where black is saying, I will occupy the center with my pawns, I will seize the center where I can. White is saying, I will hold those pawns back a little bit. So we have here black playing a classic opening approach, and white a little bit more, shall we say, of a modern one. So knight to c3 with the knight fighting for these two central squares. Logical development, and black plays knight f6. There is that classical fight. As we will see, black is of course contesting for these central squares. So white plays g3, very common for the English opening. And the idea is to fianchetto the bishop and carry this long range of development with long range of influence with this bishop. So black plays now pawn to d5. Now the intention of pawn d5 is of course to seize the center, and you can see now black's strategy, occupying the center with their pawns, saying, white, if you don't want the center with your pawns, I shall take it. Fundamentally, we have here a reverse Sicilian, a very interesting theme, as if we have flipped colors for a brief moment. And here, after pawn captures, knight takes, bishop to g2, forcing the knight to make a decision. Now, normally we would get this position where it would be these color of white, and the knight would normally be on c6. So here black has to play a little bit carefully, because there is actually a great deal of energy in white's potential pieces, and he plays logically. He says, you're attacking my knight, let me move the knight out of the way, preventing any dangerous tactics. Now we get the knight to f3, knight to c6, and immediately here, black needs to focus on solving their problem, which is completing the development. So we get this moment of castles, bishop to e7. He simply wants to get his king out the middle. Great advice for you in your games. Notice black is not trying to play too early. And what I mean by this is still the opening. So black is focusing on, let me finish my development. They're not trying to attack. Many players make that mistake, that they try and attack right out of the opening when the foundations are not yet present, not correct yet. So pawn to d3, as we will see that pawn to d3 is a logical developing move. The pawn sits just outside the center, prepares for the bishop to develop, and immediately black castles. And here we begin our transition from the opening into the middle game, as white has two moves to make to finish their development, the same for black. So here we get this move of bishop to e3, and we can start seeing white's intention. Remember what I said to you, that fight of the modern or almost hyper-modern of not occupying the center with pawns, holding the pawns back, and potentially trying to allow black to occupy the center with their pawns, and white wants to try and make weaknesses, use that against the opponent. So the bishop is targeting the square, and we'll see that this semi-open file is very important for white. That is part of their plan on the queen side. They would like to put a piece onto c5. They would like to use their bishop, which carries this influence on the queen side as well, to help them with their future plans. So this is actually the idea of the English opening, to play on the queen side. Use all of those pieces, use the fact that they can bring a file to bear. So what should black do here? Because here we get black developing bishop g4, a smart move. Very, very simple. The idea, of course, is to threaten to trade or put pressure on the e2. So you're developing actively. But also, as we'll see, it now gets the benefit, it provokes white to make a weakness. And I don't believe h3 is the correct path here. Just kicking the bishop is potentially making a target. And actually, we will see that pawn move later on was part of the downfall for white. Now, it is not a substantial mistake, but be careful, as we've learned from so many of the earlier ones. Go through them again. Pushing pawns in front of your king, you need to be very careful because a pawn cannot move backwards. So the bishop goes back to h5. Clearly, black has a plan that he wants some sort of presence and pressure on that diagonal. So white continues to play rook to c1. Okay, and then we get the move queen to d7, completing the development at this stage. Very simple from black. All the pieces are in the game. I do want you to see that here we have black completing their development on move 11. It's rather late in the game, but that is what happens in an English opening. It's not an exceptionally sharp system. And when we say sharp, we mean a lot of threats, a lot of tactics, a lot of attack, cut and thrust. So here in this position, we get this move knight a4. What is the plan? What is the idea? As we said earlier, they intend to occupy this square on c5. So black takes this chance to play on the other side of the board because white has made a little bit of an error. Bishop takes f3, destroying the defender and leaving white with a difficult problem. First issue is, of course, if they were to take with a pawn, they'd have these double pawns here and leave themselves with this isolated pawn. So this would not be the best of decisions. And the other choice is to take with the bishop and now give up a pawn in this position. Now, as we'll see, this is the choice that they made, but now their little weakness that they made earlier has become a problem. So bishop takes c6. I would say this is a terrible move in this position. And it might be so strange. How can I say bishop takes here, potentially winning a pawn? How can this be a terrible move? Well, if we look carefully, clearly this bishop is so important to white because they've already played for the fianchetto. The light squares around this king side are very weak, so they need to be careful to use their piece to protect it. Also, it is the only light squared bishop on the board. That could be in future a big plus for white. The bishop pair are a very good partnership. They're a real, tangible advantage. And here, white is guilty of being too materialistic. They simply see that they've lost a pawn and they want to get back in the game. And this is a mistake because they should rather focus on continuing their plan with knight c5. And the fact that they're a pawn down, it's okay because they have their bishop to defend the king. But instead, with bishop takes c6, pawn takes c6, rook takes. Now we have material parity, material balance. And this is such an instructive moment for you. If we take a step back in this position, we can say this position is finely balanced and we can say that it's equal. Yes, black is up a pawn, but white's pieces are that little bit better. If we look at that pressure with that idea of knight c5, this bishop sits so nicely on this diagonal, it creates pressure on b7, the rook backing it up. We can see that the white pieces have more activity. Notice threats. There are almost no captures from the black pieces. Only this bishop. The knights are rather passive. So it means that white's activity compensates for the material. And that's that positional versus material in chess that we have to balance out, where we have to talk about, yes, white has a pawn deficit, but their pieces are better than black's pieces. So very important with the evaluation. But in the game, they played bishop takes c6. And I've stopped and taken time to explain this to you because this is the substantial mistake of the game by white. It leads to their loss. Yes, they're winning back a pawn, but now white is much worse. And let's unpack why. It's because their king is weak and they are not creating counterplay elsewhere. But okay, if the king is weak, we've learned and worked the rule of three. What pieces are going to help the black queen in this case? And this is where it becomes very important. Black needs to get a piece across, and they begin the journey by moving knight d5. A great move because it's done with a threat. They are threatening to capture here on e3. After the pawn takes back, queen takes check, and the white king will be stripped bare, barren of any protection. So they have a problem. White defends with queen e1. Very passive move. They really are struggling here to defend, and we can see the last sequence of moves, white has been struggling to come up with good responses. And at this stage, black now gets another chance to thrust in a new weapon, f5. This is part of the idea because the f pawn rushes forward with the rook joining in behind it. And now black is in the ascendancy. And I do want you to see that caution. Earlier, white was down a pawn, good position with lots of play. Now, white is equal on material, but we can see they are much worse with the threats coming for their king. So they decide to play bishop c5. This is not going to save them because now we simply get pawn to f4. And the whole idea is built on the invasion that is now possible in this case. So white decides to play bishop takes e7. Normally, we would think that a trade, liquidating, is a good idea, but there's nothing protecting the white king. So black has so many pieces that are close by, and look at all the gaps that have been caused by white's play. So here we get this wonderful move, pawn takes g3, threatening to mate them on the move. There is no chance for them to play bishop takes rook, and temporarily white is a piece up. But look at their pieces. They're nowhere where they need to be. They're not around the king. So suddenly they are stuck. They decide to capture back. And then we get this wonderful knockout blow in this position of knight to e3. Spectacular. We are threatening queen g2 checkmate. We're threatening rook takes here as well, winning the queen, then following up with checkmate. And I want you to suddenly see how the rule of three is applied so wonderfully well. They have a knight, a queen, and a rook attacking. The knight and queen are setting up the mate, and the rook is making sure no other pieces could join in. And you might wonder, but hold on, white can simply play rook takes check. Well, of course, the rook takes back, and we renew the threats. There is mate once again, the rook joining in. Now there's nothing to spare them. If we take a step back and we say, oh, they will play rook to f2 to try and survive. No, because now queen takes check and the king is so stripped of cover, there is no chance to survive after the king moves. Rook takes f2. We have simply a checkmate, a checkmate. There are too many tools here in this position and too much to win. So a spectacular victory. And I wanted to stop at the turning moment where white gave up their light squared bishop, completely destroying the cover of their king. And it's such an important moment to understand that material is not everything in a chess position. Here, you've seen how the English opening can be handled by occupying the center and focusing on basic development. And we have such an intriguing fight where black was able to use that superior control of the center to switch from one side of the board to the other. A wonderful victory. So let's continue on our course and see the next game.